Welcome to Coffee with Joe for January 8th, 2010, our first Coffee with Joe of 2010. Joe, Happy New Year.
Thank you, Pete. Nice to be here again.
The situation in Iceland is ratcheting up. Let me just give a broad overview of how I understand what's happened in Iceland. A bank in Iceland called Icesave took a lot of deposits from people around the world, apparently a lot of deposits from British citizens, invested a lot of that money in some of these speculative real estate vehicles that were invested heavily in the southwestern part of the United States, and a lot of those properties have gone belly up. Um, the bank had a private form of deposit insurance. I guess there's no FDIC in Iceland, or if there is, this bank was not subject to it. So they had their own private insurance, which was not up to the task. Once again, we have excessive risk not being accounted for. So the insurance company was not able to make the depositors good. And Gordon Brown, Prime Minister of Britain and former Chancellor of the Exchequer, actually took funds from his own British FDIC insurance account to pay off the British depositors who had lost money in the Icesave bank. Um, and now Gordon Brown is trying to go after the citizens of Iceland for the mistakes that were made by a private bank that denominated their savings and their accounts in the Icelandic kroner. So now we have individual citizens, taxpayers who are not responsible for creating the problem, are the system is trying to put these taxpayers on the hook for the problem. Is that the rough outline of the situation, Joe?
Yeah, that is the situation. But you know, it's a little bit confounded, Pete, by the other fact of what's going on in Iceland. In other words, the Icelandic economy itself has gotten into trouble. Okay, and as such, it's in a situation where it's relying on banks, the International Monetary Fund, and some other banks in a workout situation, Pete. So that's confounding the situation, Pete. You see, in other words, Gordon Brown himself has leverage because he has leverage with the IMF, and because he has leverage, and he and the Bank of England and those banks have leverage with the people that are providing the workout. Ordinarily, you would say that the sovereign people of Iceland would say, well, that's ridiculous. You know, we're not responsible for that private bank's debts. And that would be the end of the story. But those same private taxpayers and citizens of Iceland are also dependent upon, Pete, the IMF's workout. So now, you know, it becoming a question of whether the rest of the world is going to continue to support Iceland to get itself out of its own debt problem, and do that by taking on the debt burden of this private bank to the citizens of Great Britain. And the manifestation with Iceland is unique and, in my opinion, overdue. Okay, because we have the situation where there's a certain recognition of the fact that there's actually too much debt in the world, and it's not equitably apportioned. That is to say, whoever went out and accumulated more of that debt is ultimately responsible for it, and those that did, in theory, are going to be subject to International Monetary Fund or whoever, some kind of international regime to work it out. So, what does that mean? That means that Iceland itself is just an example of what has to happen. And what has to happen is the recognition that there is too much debt. What do we mean when we say there's too much debt? The two people I'll refer to, Steve Keen, the Australian economist, who says, if you look at it, we can't afford to make the debt service payments. Same thing Paul Volcker said a while back. And something that we have referred to on our website, and occasionally, Pete, is the paper by Stephen LeChance called "How Debt Money Goes Broke." All of this stems, Pete. All of this situation stems from the fact that we have a debt money system. That ever since Bretton Woods, when we agreed to do fractional reserve banking on a global scale, that all money would be issued as debt, requiring an interest payment on it, issued as debt to secure an asset. Where's the interest payment come from? Well, it comes from the money that gets created to produce the next asset. And there's some kind of a theory out there that says that those things can be self-liquidated, but they can't. And the fact that they can't eventually catches up to you at the point in time when you can't issue enough new debt money to make the interest payment on the debt money, the debt that's already out there. Or I say the debt money that's already out there. And that's really where we're at. And that's why Stephen Keen, says we need the debt jubilee. He says, well, there has to be some kind of a repudiation. Now, my take on it is this. The attempt is being made by the international financial capitalists to work out this debt by extending it out, transferring it to whatever degree is possible from private holdings to public holdings. That's my take on it. That's what I call the great settlement of accounts, which they're trying to set up right now, and which, if we don't get in place, is supposed to destroy the confidence of the American people and the rest of the world, and bring the crash down. So we can't have that, so we need to have the workout. However, if you look at Stephen LeChance's paper on how debt money goes broke, and you see that what he calls the cascading cross defaults that lead to financial chaos that would happen if they started, okay? And he says we either need a new monetary system or we need the governments to get out of money and just let private people work it out. Where I'm at, Pete, as you know, since it was the debt money system that got us into this problem in the first place, is we need to be going with the debt-free money system. There's no reason to have all this debt in the world. If we rely on new debts to make the interest payments on the debts that are already out there, we have to create new debts in order to make the interest payments, Pete. That's not only the definition of insolvency, but in my opinion, financial insanity, because it's totally unsustainable. It's totally ridiculous. Anybody that looks at it in terms of cause and effect can see that it cannot be sustained and maintained. So it's a defective money system. And what we need, Pete, is the new money system. That's the solution that we need. Debt-free money issued by the government.
Joe, about out of time on this video. Tim Geithner was in the news this week too, and I know you got some thoughts on that. Let's do that in the next video, okay?
Okay, Pete, thanks.